Welcome to the Close Cover Podcast, where we look to empower men with faith, strength, and wisdom to lead their families, their communities, and their churches. I'm Jon LaBorde. This is Jason Cude. This is Jeff Paluch. Guys, let's dive right in.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too, man. This has been a long time coming.
I think for our first launch, which seems like it's taken forever for us to get there, man, there's so much that I feel like that has brought this about in our conversations. Really, how this thing started. Of what are men supposed to be? How are we supposed to act? With so many voices trying to describe, trying to set limitations and things on who we are and what we're not. Just such a need for almost a redefining, a getting back to the roots of what does a godly man look like? What are we supposed to be?
It's a good question.
And I'm excited to jump into that.
We're fired up, man. We get to remove all the distractions. And it's funny because we heard a word earlier today about what's the one thing to focus on. And it's our relationship with Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. It's where we're at in our life. It's how we came up with the name of what we're even calling this podcast, in close cover, right? And it's back to even the quote that you spoke at your table when we were praying and coming up with this idea and talking to our wives about where we want to position ourselves within it and how we want to just feed that into men and families and teach people to be leaders, not that they have to be just the largest macho man or strength within the foundation that goes into their homes, and break down barriers of thought, right? And that is exciting. I'm fired up for it too. I really am.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can also dive into, the name of the podcast and what close cover means. Mm-hmm. I know we sat there for a while and we talk about, like, this is a long time coming that, I don't know how many conversations we've had, how many times we've sat down, talked about what we wanted this podcast to be, what direction we wanted to go with it. And then we had long conversations. Jason, I think you and I probably sat on the phone for at least an hour. Coming up with some pretty interesting names that we thought the podcast could be. And we had some pretty good ones too. And it to me, like, I wanted a name for the podcast that really meant something.
Right.
And we were struggling with it, and I wanted there to be, intentionality in the name. I wanted there to be meaning in the name, and I wanted it to come from a place that would represent God, represent our stance, and show, like, the community that we need to build as men. Right. And as we were kind of sitting on the phone, like, we were going through different names, and I've got a small military background, and then I have my law enforcement background. And I was thinking of terms that we use, in law enforcement, and close cover is a term that we use. We use close cover. It's a position that we use that is basically very similar to an overwatch for somebody that's doing, like, plainclothes work, somebody that's in the nitty gritty, somebody that's out there in a dangerous place trying to do the right thing. There's always going to be one person that is in the mix that isn't known, but they're constantly providing close cover for that person that's out there. And in this sense, doing God's work. Right. And I think that as men, and we build that community, we need to build that community with a sense of close cover for each other so that we're accountability partners for each other. We always have to have somebody that is leading us, and then we have to have somebody that we're leading. And in each of those sense, we're an angle of that close cover. When we have somebody that's leading us, they're providing us with that close cover. They're providing us with that mentorship. And then when we're leading someone else, we're providing them with that close cover.
Right.
And I think that you have to have both of those angles. And this podcast is an opportunity for us to sit together. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different experiences. We all interpret things a little bit different. The cornerstones are the same. But I think to let men out there be able to come and sit down and have this discussion with us and listen to how we handle situations at work, how we handle situations with our families, how we handle situations with our friends.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the basis of how we handle that? And being able to bring the Bible into it and talk about how a strong Christian man leads his family, how he leads at a workplace, and how he leads with his friends is kind of what this is going to be about. I think it's a great opportunity. And it's a great opportunity to have three different perspectives.
Right.
Well, it's going from that place too that we're not bringing perfection to the table.
Absolutely not.
We're three jacked up,
Really close though.
broken individuals, and I think that's one of the biggest things we found in conversation is one, we could talk a lot, right, and two, is we all have battered pasts with different things and junk that's lined up within us. We each have testimonies of how we found faith in our lives and how we found God in our lives. And we broke down stereotypical barriers to really find out what the foundation of Christ is in our lives. And that's what our goal is not to just change the mindset of what a Christian man looks like, but just to show people that we're normal.
Right.
It's not part of the crazy wackadoodle stuff we used to think we saw when we were kids and wanted to stay as far away from it as we possibly can. It's actually something that's changed us in a way that we get to serve others and ourselves and our families and everything around us in a way that is just fulfilling beyond belief. And I think that's where it comes from. And you said it in that Shannon Alder quote, and I'm going to bring up the quote.
Absolutely.
And we said, this is close cover. Hide yourself in God so that when a man tries to find you, he has to go there first.
That's right.
That's close cover.
Yeah.
Easy way to say it.
I think it's such a great picture of, the concept a lot of times is, I know me, and I know I'm not the only man that feels that way, is you feel like you're alone sometimes.
Yeah.
You feel like you're on an island. You're trying to do it all yourself. You've got to be the strongest in every situation, whether it's, picking up for your kids, picking up for your wife, work, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all of this weight of responsibility. Yet at the same time, it's like we have the best cover. Mm-hmm. We have the best covering, and that gets into, a lot of different kind of theological things, but just the picture of being undercover, that close cover that he's constantly watching. He's constantly covering us. And I think what's really great, about this is that it's about establishing identity, and our identity first and foremost is defined by him. Like it's set out from the beginning,
right?
Of, hey, this is what you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
This is who you're supposed to be. And so, just really being able to find comfort in that and find a place where I don't have to apologize for being a man.
Right.
And, we see so much nowadays where it's like, it's almost a dig if you're, a manly man or you know what I'm saying? It's like, there's so much emasculation.
Absolutely.
That's happening in our day and age where, any type of strength or I'm not going to say aggression, but any type of strength or standing up or, gets looked on in these like lenses of chauvinism and narcissism and, just trying to put people down and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And, that's really not the nature of being a man. That's really not the definition. But there are aspects of assertiveness, and you see it throughout the Bible. You see it throughout history of, men that don't take the easy way,
Right.
and bend to like these mindsets. And so I think we're really going to get an opportunity to explore that and how it looks. And I think it was really great. We do come from very different backgrounds, military and law enforcement. And Jeff, just give a little bit about your background to some extent.
Well, I'm the northern folk here in the room.
Yankee.
Grew up in Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago.
But yeah, Chicago. I still got the accent a little bit. And I could throw it out there like the best of them. But go White Sox, go Bears, right?
I guess.
Yeah,
we
right.
can edit that.
Is that bears or beers?
Bears. That's something.
It's however you want to say it. They both taste good. It's good. But grew up in a poor home. Grew up on the south side of Chicago. My path here was definitely different. It was a corporate move, but God was calling me here in a way, and we saw that. But I mean, I didn't grow up in a godly situation. My parents, tried their best and sent me to CCD. Growing up Catholic, all the different things. But I actually will not say that I was saved in my life till I was in my 30s, right? Mm-hmm. And actually found out what that meant. And I found out really what that meant when I moved down here and actually felt the presence of God in a lot of different things that I did. But, outside of the junk that we'll get into as we talk about this and continue on, I'm in executive leadership. I come from a different background. I'm not in law enforcement. Don't work in construction, right? We'll hear with your backgrounds and stuff too, but I do work with people and manage people. And it's just things we've learned, throughout life. Even if you express yourself in leadership as not a strong force or boldness in that leadership position, you're not doing right or serving your team well. And it's like things that we've even talked about in our relationship with Christ that have helped me lead better and listen more, right? It's going back to 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? And really learning and focusing on what that means to us in our lives and how we approach conversations and everything that we're doing with that focus. Because I am definitely a talk over guy, or was called a bulldog early in life, and people would hear that now and they'd be like, no, man, Jeff's a softie. But also, at the end of the day, you start to find out who you really are when you change your focus. So,
and I think the mentality of masculinity is really like, when you say the word masculine, or you say the word a real man, or manly man, like you get this picture, and I think back to like old school dad, grandpa generation, that right. kind of like, I'm gonna work, and like that stern, angry all the time.
Yep.
All they do is work.
Cut cancer off with a pocket knife.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, the tree's in the way, so I chewed it down or something. Like this misconception of really what it looks like. And I think part of those aspects are applicable.
Absolutely.
Where there has to be a level. I heard this quote the other day. It's Jordan Peterson, and he's talking about being a monster. Have you heard that?
Oh yeah.
And he's like, you have to be a monster. You have to be an absolute monster, and then knowing that you can control it. And like this thing has been like bouncing around in my head, and I'm like, now me personally, the term monster, I don't necessarily like. I get it. I understand the concept, like the term, but so he goes to expand on this, and he's talking about the potential for being dangerous, the potential for like, you see the guys on YouTube or whatever, and they're like, look like mild-mannered Joe Blow, and then somebody messes with them, and they're like
An explosion.
800-degree ninja, and just like headbutt and kick the dude that's in front of them and all this stuff. And they, it's just like very much Clark Kent, Superman kind of transformation. And I think there's that aspect that we're losing nowadays, where we're scared to be dangerous. We're scared to be
100%.
We're scared to be a force to be reckoned with,
Right.
Because it's so misconstrued.
Yeah.
It's so polarized, where if there's any force, if there's any aggression, if there's any any things like that, it's like, oh, well, you're just this and that. And, you want your wife barefoot and pregnant, and she doesn't have an opinion, and your kids can't do anything. And, it's just kind of like, it's jacked up.
Yeah. It's what culture is doing nowadays. And they're rewording things, redefining words, and they're making what should be a positive into a negative. With what you're saying about, that Jordan Peterson quote, that's what I was talking to you the other day about. It's like, what is a peaceful man? Well, in order to be peaceful, you have to be capable of great violence. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not capable of great violence, you're not peaceful, you're harmless. Right?
Right.
And that's where, like, one of my terms is savagely peaceful. Like, be savagely peaceful. You have to be that monster, and you have to know how to contain it and be a peaceful man until you have to let that monster back out.
Right.
And savage monster, sometimes they have a bad connotation that goes with them, but savage at the same time just basically means not being of the cultural norm. And I think that that's what us as Christian men need to be right now. The cultural norm is demasculating a man. Mm-hmm. It's taking the father out of the family. It's taking the leader out of that family. And in order to go against that, then we need to be savage in the way that we are going to lead our families.
Right.
And the culture is, you look at it in just about any aspect of how things are beginning to go downhill. And you look at fatherless homes. Fatherless homes are the number. It is. It's an epidemic, and that's where a lot of crime, a lot of poverty, a lot of things are coming out of. You need a positive male role model in the home to lead that family. Mm-hmm. I mean, it says so right there in that Bible.
Right.
And this is what it comes down to. And probably one of the best acronyms that I heard is, a Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth.
I knew you were going to put acronyms in there. I knew you were going to do it.
That's the military and the law enforcement in me. We turn everything into an acronym.
I say no acronyms, and here we go. We're going to jump right into acronyms. Yeah, before leaving Earth. I got it.
I like that.
It's simple. Y'all were trying to give me the one before.
And then here's another acronym: KISS. The KISS technique of doing this, right? Keep it simple, stupid. That's where somebody said that to us too. But that's spot on. It's you talk about the epidemic, like here we are, we fear sickness, we fear everything around us, and people are running in circles to try and run away from things when we have to run towards it. And that's what being a man is. That's what being a godly man is finding a way to not only serve yourself, but serve others and run towards the situation, and come at it in a way where we don't grip it with fear. We grip it with the faith that we have something that's so much more complete than us, that's going to cover us in that situation. And that's what that close cover is. But you think about it, even in the fatherless homes, and, we'll kick off great ministries. Like I worked with KOZ as a few years ago with my boys, and went in there, and, there's a concentration on the fatherless youth, because in America, we have the highest going rate or population of fatherless youth than any other country in the world. Just think about that. And here we think we have everything, and we have extra privileges, and we do. I mean, we could say this. I mean, we even talk about it, how we grew up compared to how our families grew up, and how much more we were able to provide for our families in different ways. And we never want them to see that hurt or that pain. But even in countries where that hurt and that pain is, they also have a foundation of knowing that they need a father in the household to help get them through it. And that's priceless. Like we get away from that. We stray from that, and we think it's not important to be led. Everybody needs to be led. You know, we talk about the spiritual leader and a spiritual follower, and we talk about mentorship and all the different things that is a necessity. And it just grains from that whole thought of people are going to judge us regardless. And people are going to say we need to control every situation. And when you're in control, you can manipulate the situation. But what happens when all control is gone and it's not yours and you give it up? And that's what the point we're trying to get to is you don't need to control everything. You need to let it happen, because when you're based on what you feel, that's where offense happens. And that's where this world's gotten to, is so many people want to control and manipulate the situation. The offense is always there because it's a personal issue. It's a pride fight, right?
Yeah.
With themselves. So, and I don't know, I hope that circled back. But
No, I think it did. And I mean, you know, on the topic of fathers, you know, you can't help but make the direct tie to our Father,
right.
you know, and building that relationship there. It's one thing to sit at this table and talk about how we need to be fathers in our home, and how our sons and daughters need to have these relationships with us, and we need to lead them. At the same time, we need to know who our Father is.
Right.
We need to build that relationship with Him, and we need to know how to properly spend time with Him and how to have that relationship.
Right.
I know that was a struggle for me very early on. Similar to what you said, like brought up in the Catholic Church, went to Catholic schools. So my relationship with God was always there. I always believed in God. I always believed in the Bible, but I wasn't saved, you know.
Right.
And it wasn't until my early to mid 20s, whenever I actually made that commitment, and took that step to where there was no doubt in my mind that no matter what happened to me, where I was going.
Right.
And I kind of just sat there. Like, I didn't make much progress from that point. I thought, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, I've done what I need to do. No matter what happens to me, you know, I know where I'm going to end up. I know I'm going to heaven. And it wasn't till a few years back that I was like, man, that's not right. Like, it's one thing to make that commitment, but it's another thing to stay stagnant. And you have got to take those steps to develop that relationship with God, because you constantly hear people talking about, you know, the relationship they have with God, or whenever God speaks to me, or whenever the Holy Spirit directs me in this and that. And I would sit back and I would be like, I don't hear anything.
What's that crazy sauce?
You know, what are you talking about? And the issue was with me. It wasn't with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect to be able to hear from somebody that you never talked to?
Yeah.
How do you expect to be able to have somebody guide you when you're not in their word? And it's been a work over the past couple of years, and it's taken discipline. It's taken consistency. And I have not been perfect at it by any means.
Yeah,
you know, I struggle with it, but it's a goal of mine. And the marked differences that I've seen in my life and my family's life and my kids' life since I have taken that extra step and that extra effort to build a relationship with my Father, to know who God is, to actually get into His Bible. Like, I've made the commitment, I don't know how many times I'm going to read the Bible this year. And I've never completed that commitment, and I'm dedicated to it this year. Like, I'm sitting down, I've got the Bible plan with the Bible app, you know, I'm sitting down and I'm doing the Bible recap.
Yeah.
And it truly, this is the first time, and I think it's because I'm dedicated to it. This is the first time that, like, I wake up and I'm like, oh, I get to go sit down in the quiet with the Bible, listen to whatever chapters we're going over, and then have this recap. But I think that is a big focus in order to be a man of God, we have to understand that we are also sons.
Right.
And that there is a place for us to be led, even though we are meant to lead our family.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, and this is where the danger falls in. I mean, besides just what it does, like naturally to kids and people, the danger falls in and kind of just piggybacking off of where you were at. When your grow up process is fatherless or divorced home or abusive parent or, anything like that, then the notion of God being a father is seen through a lens of your earthly experience. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it exceedingly difficult if you were just raised by mom or grandma or whatever, and then they tell you have a loving father in heaven. What does that mean? What does that look like? And I know early on, for me was like I'm just waiting to get in trouble kind of deal, because, some of my experience growing up was I'm waiting for the doom and gloom. I'm waiting for, man, you blew it. I'm waiting for, I knew you couldn't do it. I knew you weren't going to get there. Right. And so, my view of God as a father early on is very skewed. It's all about performance and perfection to make sure that he stays proud, not the belief and understanding that he's proud of me.
No matter what. That
he loves me no matter what. Right. That even when I screw up, I'm still good enough. I still matter. I'm still worth something. And, our culture really has, because so many people grow up without a dad or single parent homes or whatever, that ability to relate to God in the father-child perspective is really difficult. It really takes a lot of
you're waiting for that same discipline.
Yeah, well, ways. Or you have no idea what it's supposed to look like. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because your perspective is developed by how you view your earthly father, whether you know him, you don't, he was good, he was bad, he was, absent, whatever. It's like that paints a picture of what you think it's supposed to be. And, part of what we want to do as men with this podcast is we want our picture as fathers, as husbands, as leaders, whatever, to be a translation, to be that's an easy to get to. Right. Because of how I carry myself, because of how I act, because of how I treat my family, my kids, my wife, they see and understand a God the Father, a God the Protector, a God the you know what I mean? Not that I am a God, it's a reflection of him in me that they see. And so their relationship is so much easier to develop than say ours was or whatever,
Well, it's creating that order of importance. Mm-hmm. It's putting God first in our lives and in our families and letting our kids know, hey, God is your father. Like, when we say Abba, Father, we're saying Daddy. Yeah. Like, God, you're our dad. And no matter how much hurt or prideful anger we have towards our earthly fathers in ways that we describe, pain was brought to us in our lives, they're human. Mm-hmm. They're going to fall short. They had a savior that was also there for them, that died on a cross to cover their sins, to cover the things that they screwed up with. And we're going to fall short daily.
Oh, absolutely.
And we need to repent daily. But the one thing is we just know that the fact is we hope we figure certain things out, but at the same time, we know we're just being led daily. And it's that whole lifelong learner aspect of what we're chasing.
Oh
Right?
yeah. We never fully arrive.
Right.
Yeah, I know in what y'all are talking about, I know a big change for me, like anytime that I messed up, I think you said it too. Anytime that I messed up in life, it was always a fear to go home,
Right.
and have to say
The discipline.
it wasn't, yes, it was the discipline, but it wasn't always the discipline that you were afraid of.
Right.
But it was the fact that you had to go home and say, I messed up. And you knew that there was going to be some type of recourse for it. And it took me the longest time to understand that that is not the type of relationship that you should have with a father. It's not the type of relationship that my son should have with me, and it's not the type of relationship that I should have with God. If I mess up, I should be eager to run to my dad, to run to God, and be like, I messed up. What do I do?
Right.
Yeah.
Teach me.
And if you can make that small change in your perspective of when you mess up and understand that he's not there to criticize you. He's not there to, be ashamed of you. He's there to comfort you. He's there to lead you. He's there to help you,
Right.
And my son did something, and it was kind of it's like, all right, maybe I am doing something right, in the way that I'm leading him, but he messed up, and I know that he sat there freaking out about it. And when he realized I cannot fix this on my own, he was in his room and he called out for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that's not the perfect example of what our relationship with God should be, like, we need to realize that there are things that most things we cannot do successfully on our own. We may do them right for a little while, but in the long run, we just can't do them on our own. And if we can realize that we're not capable of that on our own, and that we just need to call out to our dad, he's going to be there. He's going to be there to help us. He's going to be there to guide us. He's going to be there, to lead us through it, over it, under it, however, whatever it takes, he's there for us. And if you can make that perspective change, and we're going to, because we're imperfect. When we mess up, don't run away, don't try and hide, don't pull an Adam and Eve. Right. Like, he knows when we do something wrong. Yeah. Accept it and run to him, And I think that if Christian men can make that transition in their thought, and it took a while for me, that your relationship with God is going to be completely different, because you're no longer trying to hide,
right?
And we are jacked up people, and we are going to constantly make mistakes,
yeah,
and we're going to constantly mess up, and there is very often that we feel like we need to hide under the table, or run around the corner and be ashamed of what we did. But if we can just understand, if we could just drop all of that and just call out his name, and go to him, he's going to lead us. He's going to guide us through whatever that situation is. And even if it's not a situation where we flat out did something wrong, but it's a work situation, it's a friendship situation, that there's just stress, there's turmoil, there's big decisions to be made. Right?
Well, I think you hit on it too. I mean, the understanding that even anything I can do good on my own
can be better
with him in every situation, in every part, in every place. If I'm doing it with him, it's going to be better than anything I can do on my own. In my own strength, I'm just, we just don't measure up.
Yeah,
right.
And that's not a failure. That's a understanding that we need him in every part and every piece of our lives. That there's no place where I can't say, or where I can say, okay, this part, God, I got it. Mm-hmm. Hey, kick back, take a break. I know you're busy. You know what I mean? It's like there's no place in our lives where we should be able to say that. And if we do, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, that concept of the run and hide. I mean, primarily because men are their own worst critics.
Right.
far above and beyond anybody else. And some of it is like, oh, that's so stupid. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
Daily.
I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And some, it's like we know it. And, sometimes we're too pig-headed to like, okay.
We know it.
We know that we know. That was like, I'm not hiding anything. Okay. That was dumb. And then having to admit sometimes like, okay, you know what, God? Yeah, that was stupid.
Well, it's funny too, because our wives will get together or somebody who knows us and they're like, oh, he does that too.
Oh, yeah.
And every single one of us, we just kind of smirk in the background and they're like, that really does happen with every single, really does happen with every single one of us. But the one point you were getting to though is perspective. I love how you're saying that. And two, God is always working for the good in the situation,
right? In
the moment, in everything. And once your perspective changes to that,
right, you
start to see joy. And people like, I have friends that still don't believe. I pray for him every day. And, I had one specifically come up to me and said, I'd rather believe in aliens than believe that Jesus Christ died on a cross for me. Mm-hmm. And it's all about the perspective of what people have taught him about what Christianity is to this world and all the preconceived notions and judgments that we cast out, right? And I think what we're trying to say in this is being a godly man, being a godly father in our homes, being a leader in the churches we're at, being a leader in our workspaces, being in any space, and being that is also being welcoming and saying, hey, you're allowed to the table. It's not our job to judge you. It's our job to bring you in and show you what godly men look like.
Yeah.
What it is. Not to change who we are. God changes who we are. The Holy Spirit convicts us to do different things. And, it's not for us to cast those judgments in every situation, but it's also to sit there and just show people what that joy looks like. Because that's what is attractive in a way. And I use a worldly word to really describe it. But once you know it, you know it. And it's funny because we could say that at this table, but outside this table, for people that don't even have the relationship, they're like, I don't even understand what that attraction is. And it's hard to put into words, but that is perspective. That is the need. That is the Father. That is everything that feeds into it.
Well, you're gonna stand out.
Right.
That's where that kind of I know I'm super attractive, but what really stands out is being different.
Yeah.
And when everybody at work is cussing and talking about getting trashed and going to the clubs and blah 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 and all these this stuff and things, and you're different, you stand out. And being rooted and grounded in Christ, being centered in I am who I am because he made me who I am, which is constantly a work in progress. Mm-hmm. It like that concept of, oh, well, God made me this way, so it must be okay. No, that some of that is sinful nature and we're dumb. We're constantly a work in progress, but we're still different than the norm. And you see a sense of stability. You see a sense of when everything else is crazy, when everything else moves on a whim, you've got guys that are standing that are stable, that are solid. You can count on them to respond and react a certain way. Right. And that's attractive. That attracts the questions of why are you different? What's going on with you? Dude, you don't, you said something, you said it's about showing people. I don't even remember the thing, but I know you use the word show because it's super important. It's showing, not saying.
Right.
It's like, being an example in how you carry yourself, how you act. And then if you have to use words later, it's like words are important when the question comes up of why am I different? Why don't I talk about going to the strip clubs? Why don't I cuss like a sailor in the middle of everything that I do? Why, you know what I mean?
Right.
How and why am I different? Well, then the words come in for explanation, but the rest is really a demonstration of, I used to be this way and now I'm not.
Well, and it doesn't happen overnight either.
No, absolutely. That we're always working on something.
And sometimes it even gets harder. And I think you said something earlier, and there's often a quote that is misquoted, but it's people say, I hear them say all the time, God's not going to give you anything that you can't handle. And that's not what he has never said that.
Right.
God's not going to give you anything that you can't handle without him.
Right.
And the key is without him. And you have to have, and we covered that earlier. Like, you, as men, we are pre-programmed for some reason that we can conquer all things, that we don't need help.
Right.
You know, we do it with our kids whenever we're putting something together. Like, I got this, just hold the flashlight, right? Go get me the wrench, you know, and we manhandle things, and typically we end up jacking them up because we manhandle them. But in the things in life, we need to understand that as we go through those things that are challenging, that the only way to navigate them properly and to come out on the other side is with God.
Right.
And it's just, it's a constant work in progress, because I know, like, in the work environment that I work in, that filthy mouth, and I'm pretty sure the same with you.
Yeah. Construction world
it's nonstop. And am I guilty? Absolutely.
Right.
Am I constantly trying to work on it? 100%. You know, that's constantly a goal. And I'm kind of caught in a place where if I don't use that language, certain people that I'm dealing with aren't going to take me seriously, because unfortunately, all they've grown up with is being talked to or hearing that type of language in their house.
Right.
And in order for me to get a point across, I have to use some of that language to get a point across. And I've struggled with that. Like, and I've come to a place, and I've prayed and I've had my conversations. Like, there's a time and a place, you know, that's not me. But because of what I do in order to get the job done, sometimes I have to go in that direction. And that was a big struggle with me. But all of those things, the little things that just like drinking used to be an issue with me. No longer. I have completely given that up to God, and I don't struggle with it. You know, it's not a conviction of mine. It's not something that I feel a need to do. And it's not something that I have a problem having a drink. You know, I don't have a moral conviction against it. But with God, we're still going to struggle in areas because we're human. We're not perfect,
right.
You know? So it's a constant work. And I don't want anybody that's listening to this, and I think you said it earlier, to think that we're perfect.
Right.
Like, we are far from perfect. If anything, we're here to help y'all walk through mistakes as we're walking through the same mistakes. And hopefully there's some things that we've gone through that we can help y'all with, that we can help guide you through, and vice versa. You know, the point of this is for it to be an open platform.
Yeah.
You know, the areas that we have it on social media is open up for y'all to make comments, for y'all to ask questions, for y'all to share anything that you want with us, so that down the road, we can have more to talk about as we have these podcasts. But I don't want anybody out there to think that we're sitting high on our horse in here and that we've got everything perfect.
I lowered my horse.
Yeah, right.
Actually, it was really high when I got it.
And that we've got it down perfect and that we don't do anything wrong, because, man, it is a constant struggle, and there are areas in each of our lives that we are constantly working on to get better at. And I think that we're better for that struggle and for that constant persistence.
I'm actually just excited that we got this far in serious conversation.
Oh, we kept Jason.
Yeah, I didn't normally have a 7-minute window, but I'm
past that 10-minute mark.
like these cameras and stuff. I'm trying to be real good, and I feel like I'm doing okay.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm doing all right.
your phrase break.
Well, no, I just there's so much to unpack. There's so much, and I think that's going to be our biggest. One of our biggest deals with doing this and just being candid to you guys watching. There is so much to cover. There's so much that we want to talk about. There's so much in the collective experience that we have that now it's not about perfection. It's not about performance.
Right.
It truly is about, there's a moment, and I think everybody that's man, woman, child, teen, it doesn't matter. Everybody that's come to a place of faith, that's come to a place of, okay, God, I want you to live in my life. I want to be saved, for like regular normal terms. There's a moment of surrender. There's a moment of I give up. I can't do this on my own.
Right.
I know it. I see it. I recognize it, and I can't do it on my own. And especially for men, it's hard. It's hard to give up. It's hard to say I can't do this.
Right.
Dude, I've beat the heck out of so many things, from tools to projects, whatever, because I refuse to say I don't know how to do this. I'll figure out a way, and. We treat life the same way, where it's like, no, I'll just choke my life into submission, and it doesn't work that way. There's a moment of turning over control and saying, okay, God, you planned and designed my life on purpose. You knit me together before I was even known to my parents, to anybody. You had a plan and a purpose. You wrote a book of my life. You wrote out the greatest story for me to live based on your hopes and dreams for me. Right. And it's like, I kind of joke with different people. It's like, I'm at the point in my life where I want to live my life the closest to that book that I can. So God doesn't have to white out or scribble out or make extra chapters or amendments at the end of the book. It's like he already had a plan and a purpose.
Right.
That doesn't mean like this concept. So God put you in an abusive home, or God made you a drug addict, or God, no, that's not his plan. That's the choices of other people. We
still have choices.
That
Right.
Sadly enough, sometimes we have to bear those consequences as well. But, get into a place of, you know what's best for me. You knew what was best for me from the beginning of time. And so my goal moving forward, and I don't even like really calling it a goal. It's like my journey and my relationship with him is, how can I live the closest to what you wrote?
Right.
And I heard, I don't know, like I've seen some weird stuff lately, but somebody was talking about like the way our GPS works. And I want to find out who it was, because it's a great little segment. But it's like, God sets us up. Here we are, and here's our destination, and kind of like puts a GPS, right? And we make a wrong turn. It says go straight, we turn left. The GPS doesn't just give up. No. Like, you blew it. That's it. Reroute. It continues to reroute you to get you back on track.
Right.
It continues to, even if you got to make a U-turn and go like all the way around, it continues to reroute you. And God working in our lives is really the same way. It's like, you screwed up, but here's what you need to do to get back on track.
Redirect.
Yeah, you blew it. Here's what you went the opposite direction. I know the blue line says go this way, and you're really just going away from the blue line. But there's always a way to get back on track.
Right.
And, being able to admit and realize that, man, I don't have it all together. But I'm doing my best to move in such a way that
Right.
I'm following what he has for me.
Well, and that's where people struggle too, because you can see that physically through the GPS, right? Redirecting, rerouting you. But they want God to be tangible for them all the time. But the explanation of how to get there and make God tangible in your life is be in the Word. You see the physicality, you see the movement, you see the growth, you see everything when you fully understand what you're looking at. And, people will bypass that on a daily just because they're like, well, that's not tangible to me. I mean, it goes straight to, John 1, where he's like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, was with God and was God, right? And, that's the omnipresence of God. And when we talk about omnipresence, it's just him being everywhere at once, right? And it's getting back to knowing that and showing people who don't understand how God is tangible to show them how he is tangible.
Yeah.
Right. And there and present and with us and still with us to this day. Right. It's a history book of 1,600 years compacted into one place where people are like, well, that was a history book written thousands of years ago. There's more copies of this, and it's been read more times over than any other book created in history. Mm-hmm. The closest history to it is like 40 years out from when one of the last apostles died and when the book was created. Well, you read Socrates or any of those things, you're 300 and 400 years beyond when they actually created what they created. So the history is a little further off and could be misconstrued in a lot of different ways. And people want to say that this isn't truth. Well, it's the only thing we have that's that popular, that's within that time frame, that still goes back to it, and it's spanned over 1,600 years. It doesn't change, and it's not something for us to change. It's something for us to grow with, and we've seen it in our lives because we've been able to read it and read the life within it, and that's one thing that we're trying to create is, hey, this is a tool. And, it goes to what you were saying too, in Luke 1:37 is a verse that simplifies it in such a way. And I'm a KISS technique guy, so I'll go there. And it's, for nothing is impossible with God, right? Nothing. And I took that to heart when I heard it at one point in my life. And yes, I do YouTube everything in the world to try and fix every vehicle I have, or try and do I do not try anything, but I don't know if that's what he was saying to me. But at the end of the day, he's like, with me you could accomplish all things. I am working for the good in you. You are going to be in a position where you're going to have struggles, and I am going to have to reroute you. But the biggest thing I need you to understand is I gave you a free will, right? You are going to make those choices.
You get to choose.
Those are your choices, the good and the bad. But the funny thing is, in the KISS technique of things too, is you got one finger pointed out. So we want to blame God. We want to blame somebody else around us. We want to blame everybody else. But at the end of the day, I got three fingers pointed back at me. 75% of everything I point out is my fault, right? That's what somebody taught me once in my life. And it's just, think about it. Right? When you make a decision, when you're offended, when you're mad, think. That's my challenge. That should be our challenge every single day. Right? Mm-hmm. So
I think if you're offended, the first person you should look at is you, because 10 times out of 9, it's a problem with you.
Right.
It's something that, now granted, I'm talking about like normal stuff. I think people go out of their way to try and offend people nowadays. Somebody might be offended up to this point. I would even say at this point it's because God is speaking something in your life that, right, you need to change, you need to work on, you need to do differently. But I think too, to kind of circle all this back around, Jon had mentioned something about relationship, and we've talked about relationship, and the thing that always pops up in relationship, and the example I always use, because people are like, oh yeah, I go to church. And okay. If you're married, try talking to your wife on Sunday for an hour and a half.
Right. And
then let me know how the rest of your marriage goes. Once a week for an hour and a half, barely pay attention, sort of kind of talk to her a little bit. Once a week, that's not the definition of a relationship.
Nope.
Nobody's marriage, nobody's time with their kids, nobody's time with a significant other, whatever, can sustain once a week for an hour and a half and be like, okay, I'm good until next Sunday when I have my relationship time. It's like it won't work. And that constant, we're all married, so it's like I talk to my wife all the time. She's the first person I want to share good news with. She's the first person I need to share bad news with, because I know she's got my back through anything and everything. And it's like there is a relationship built where it's a constant sharing. Yeah. It's a constant, she pours into me, I pour into her. We both benefit, in this relationship. And, God has established us to have relationship with him. And, a lot of times it's like, okay, God, here's my list of, Lord, give me finances. Lord, I need a new car. Lord, fix my job. Lord, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then it's like, okay, amen, done. And then we stop the relationship and we didn't take any time to listen back.
Yeah, it's the handout relationship.
Yeah, we didn't have the conversation. Right. All we did was do our side of speaking.
Right. Yeah, it's treating him like he's a vending machine.
Well, right? Yeah.
Let's pop a quarter in and see what we get out of it.
I've said for years, and this is just, maybe it's only my experience, that hearing God is not the issue. It's doing what he says.
Right.
Like we always know that part in us, man, that's jacked up. Or even like, man, I'm doing well at this. I'm making strides. It's like we always hear.
Yeah.
He hasn't stopped speaking since the beginning of time. He is always pouring out. It's doing what he says, because that's where the choice between what he wants and what I want, where that rubber really meets the road. Like, hey, I want you to spend more time with your kids. I want you to get in this small group or connect group or whatever your terminology is. I want you to get in your word more. I want you to, whatever the thing is, how you are around your friends, how you are around your coworkers. It's like, we know I tend to be terrible at times with some of my joke bubbles. It can get off color quickly. And I know, like that, as soon as a joke comes out, it's funny. Ha ha ha. But I know it's like, it's really not what I should have said.
Right.
I should have just left that alone. And you know what I mean? It's not I can't hear God. It's, I heard him. No. I just chose something different for.
We each give our wives the, oh no, he just said that moments every single day.
So I think we do it. We do it a lot of times. And that's just one example of where
and let's be honest, it is hard to sit down and have a conversation with somebody that does not directly speak back to you. It's no matter how hard you try, at first it is awkward. It's awkward. It's hard because number one, you don't know what you're doing. And it takes time and it takes repetition of sitting down and praying and figuring out what that conversation looks like. And that's what it is. It's a conversation, right? You're having a conversation with your father. And it's not easy, and like you said, he's been talking since the beginning and before creation. And you made me think of something like you were talking about KOZ, and whenever I was with the youth ministry, I used to try and explain to them, it's kind of like and it's hard for them to understand now, but like a radio station. Like 100.7 is always playing on 100.7, but because you're on 100.2, you can't hear it. So you have to learn how to tune your radio station in. It's not that God's not talking to you. He's constantly talking to you. He's constantly trying to help you. He's constantly trying to give you advice. He's trying to guide you. He's trying to do all of that. But it's on us to learn how to properly tune him in so that we can hear him. And that's the hard part. Having a conversation, prayer, where you're sitting there in silence or however you do it, it's hard at first. You run out of things to say. You don't know what to say. You don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
If you're me and you're ADD, next thing you know, in your mind, you're figuring out how you're going to build the chicken coop, in the middle of your prayer and your conversation. So it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And it is a challenge to learn how to listen. But if you grew up with your father in your house, or if your father was a part of your life, you know his voice, right? So you could walk into a room, pitch black, with 50 men in that room,
and pick it out.
And you're going to be able to pick out your father. Even though it's pitch black, you can't see it. It's because you know his voice. But the only reason you know his voice is because you have grown up with it. It has taught you. It has disciplined you. That voice has loved you. That voice has cheered for you. That voice has done all the things that a father should do. And that's why you know it. Why would it be any different with our Father in heaven? Like, you have to have that relationship. You have to have those moments in silence and build that conversation and be comfortable in that conversation to be able to pick his voice apart from everything else in this world that's being told to you, and knowing which one to listen to and which one to follow. Because I promise you, there are a lot of voices that sound like it that are going to be telling you to do, and I hate this term, the worldly things. You've got to be able to differentiate that. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to have that conversation, build that relationship, and know what his voice sounds like.
Yeah. It's funny because you mentioned that, and all I sit here and see is like little Tweety Bird devil here and the other angel on this shoulder, like flying back and forth. No, this is what you do. This is what you do. But it's that simple. Like, even that depiction of it is, you're just hearing right and wrong in every situation. And you understand, I mean, we've lived in society long enough to understand what situational awareness is, and what to listen to, and what to do, and what discernment is, and how to think through a situation, right? And it's funny. It's like, in law enforcement, you deal with it on a daily, where you're just like, is somebody really doing something that dumb to mess up their life? And you're like, wow.
It's not only law enforcement.
That doesn't make. Well, yeah. I mean, I do it in the workplace. I do it. We do it everywhere, right? But you're like, that just doesn't make any logical sense.
He just gets to see like the big blown up version, the world stage.
He does. Well, we all see it in our own ways, but
and we've all lived it.
Yeah, no, for real.
Yeah, we were that dumb at that point.
And we still are to some point. I think that there are times that, I think that there are times that, like you were just saying, that you're supposed to do this, but you choose not to anyway.
Right.
And it says in there, that even that is a sin.
Right.
Well, and that's where I was going to get back to too. It's like in the moments of confusion, that's why, like, you can't just sustain yourself prayer conversation.
Right.
You really can't only sustain yourself word. You can't only sustain yourself church. You can't only sustain yourself like those as individual things. It's like there's a whole part of this relationship. There's a whole part of living where it's like all of these things are important. all of these things need to be happening. Yeah, we need to be praying daily. The Bible says to pray without ceasing.
Right.
That it's an ongoing conversation
Right.
throughout the day. Some parts in your head, some parts out loud, some parts, that there's an ongoing dialogue.
Right.
And that means that there's two people talking.
Right.
A little wordsmith there for a second. The dialogue, and not a monologue with one person. But there's a dialogue. There's an ongoing conversation. And then it's like, as we learn here, as we get in the Word, as we dig in, we begin to hear His voice in the pages that we read. And it helps fine tune and show the nature and character of who He is, because He is the Word. Mm-hmm. And it's like we see His nature, we see His character, we see the way He is, how He moves, how He works. And when we hear the Tweety Bird devil, I don't know why it's got to be a Tweety Bird. That's weird. It's not very intimidating. But
hey, but he never gets caught.
Yeah, whatever. He's putting tats. Like when that other perspective, when that other voice is, then there's a measuring stick of that doesn't line up with the nature and the character of the God I know. And my ongoing dialogue is not that it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
And it becomes easier and easier to recognize this is not the voice I need to be listening to. This is my constant. And, so many people are wrapped up in like that, I've never heard the audible voice.
Right.
I don't know really, that I have either. I can't think of like just the audible, that booming, or
There's
even
no burning bush sitting here right now speaking to
there
us,
wasn't.
Right?
Or even the still small whisper, but it's like that knowing,
right.
The know that I know. Like you can't convince me anything different because I know. And I know because from where I used to be to where I am, that God is active and moving and He loves and cares for me. He continues to lead and guide me throughout, throughout the process of my life and how to move forward.
And that gets to it, and where we talk about it is, I have friends that won't believe because they figure they're too far gone. And that's the one thing we've all found out is you're never too far gone.
No.
There's no sin too great.
Right.
I mean, for the presence of God and the blood of Christ to cover it, right? That's what that death at Calvary was for us. It was the motion of, I am the sacrificial lamb. I am the Lamb of God. I am His one and only Son, and I came to cover your sins. Is it a free ticket to go sin? No. But at the same time, it's the recognition of somebody gave up everything to give you something. Mm-hmm. And that's His mercy, right? And everything we get outside of that is grace. Like everything we get to have is His grace feeding into our lives.
The difference between mercy and grace, because people get those two mixed up all the time. And mercy is not getting what you deserve, and grace is getting something that you don't deserve.
Right.
And His grace, we do not deserve. I don't know if it was us that talked about this before, but I saw this person that was going around and doing interviews, and they were walking up to random people and just asking them, explain to me why you deserve to go to heaven. And person after person kept saying, well, I've lived a good life. I've never hurt anybody. I haven't.
Not a serial killer.
Right. And it's like, man, the answer to that is I don't deserve to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. Like there is not a thing that I have done that makes me worthy to go there. And it's through His grace, having something given to you that you don't deserve.
Right.
And I think it's great that you brought that up, mercy and grace.
Right.
Because that's what it is. That's what we have.
We have breath
no matter what somebody has done, no matter what background they're coming from, no matter what crime or hideous thing that they have done in their life, there's still grace,
Right.
because of what he did.
Right.
And to me, that's just huge. But that whole interview was fascinating for me because time after time, and then they stopped on this one lady, and then he started to explain the gospel to her. And she was wearing like sunglasses at the time. And he's explaining this to her, and she's like kind of nodding her head and agreeing. And then you start to see kind of like a tear come down, and he looks at her and he's like, are you crying? And she like takes her glasses off, and she's just, eyes are, full of water, and she's in tears. And she was like, I've never had anybody explain it to me like that.
Yeah.
Right.
She was like, I've never thought of it that it's not what I do that gets me there. It's that there is nothing that I can do, and I don't deserve to be there. And only because of him and his grace,
I'm welcome.
That I'm welcome, and that I can be there.
The relationship's the key. And that's why.
I have to pee.
Oh, good. Go pee.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, let's do this. Let's kind of bring it to a conclusion. I think we've covered pretty good, like what we want this podcast to be about. Right. I think it's all about trying to develop men, strengthen men, gain wisdom so that we can be the leaders that we need to be, the Christian leaders that we need to be. I got three Bible verses here that for me, they kind of culminate what a godly man is. The first one is Matthew 29:19 through 20. I read out of the ESV version. So if it doesn't line up with whatever you're reading, mine's out of the ESV, but it says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." And I think we all kind of have that. That's where that leadership comes from. And he's calling us to be disciples, to be leaders, to go out and disciple other men. Right. Earlier I talked about how stagnant I was in my relationship with God. And I thought, hey, I'm good enough. I'm not going to hell. I'm going to heaven no matter what happens. I'm just going to chill right here.
Made it.
Exactly. That's not what it says in the Bible. Like he specifically tells us to go out and to make disciples.
Right. He says it in Matthew and Luke. The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. So create workers.
And then he says in Matthew 23, or it says in Matthew 23:11 through 12, it says, "The greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." To me, that is the epitome of a man, of a Christian man. It's being humble. It's being a servant,
right?
But not like there's no negative to that. I think that some people look at that and they're like, no, that's weak.
I want to be the boss.
Yeah, I want to be in charge. I want to be the one telling the servants what to do.
Yeah.
That's like, no, man. Like the older I've gotten and the further I've gotten in my career, like being the guy that's, serving everybody else and making sure that everything gets done, like that's the leader, the one that's sitting back, that's quiet, that's watching over everybody.
You don't
that's
need the
making
credit.
sure. No, you don't.
Right.
Well, I think the understanding too of like hierarchy and it's a bad word because that means somebody's over.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or it gets misconstrued as a bad word. But like understanding that there's safety and there's security in being under what God wants you to do. Like that place of, I understand that. I mean, we've talked a lot about Father. We didn't really touch on Lord, like the lordship of like he's the boss. And being secure and safe and comfortable in a place of whatever you tell me to do. It's like that, you have it military and you have it probably law enforcement where there's people that give you orders, you report to people, but the safety and security of, I trust the people that are giving me orders, for lack of better words, and the security that's found in being in a place of, I can serve.
Right.
I can serve. And I didn't get to serve in the military. I had too many kids. They told me no.
That usually happens after you enter the military.
Well, I tried when I was 30, and I already had all of my kids, all 6 of them, and they're like, "Oh no, you can't survive off of what we're going to pay you." And they told me no. But still, it's like I've always found comfort in. Even in a church setting where, you have pastoral leadership and different people that are in different places and going, I don't have to be that.
Right.
I'm absolutely comfortable being a support person,
Right.
being a person that's, hey, give me the things to do. And I can do those things and am fulfilled and secure in a place of, let me help you, let me serve and get this thing going.
Well, even in a position of leadership, I think that you can be the servant.
Right.
It's one thing to be over someone and tell them, hey, go do this. And it's another thing to be over someone and say, hey, this is what I need done. What can I do to equip you to get that job done?
Yeah,
or what can I do to, assist you in any way? Can I help you do it? It's hard to take direction from someone that hasn't ever been there or that hasn't ever done what they're asking you to do. And as a servant leader, it's on you to equip those people, and that's kind of that mentor role that we have, but we also need to have that person that is mentoring us.
Yeah, the Paul Timothy model.
Right.
Exactly.
Well,
and it's good that you brought that up because there are a lot of people listening that don't understand what that is. I don't know if you want to expound more on it, but
I think Jeff has an idea over here. He's swinging his pen.
Yeah, I got a lot of things going on in my peanut brain over here, but it's good. But exactly to what you're saying is everybody's looking for position, right? And we're taught that, hey, getting to the highest position or position of authority is stature. And
success.
It's success. It's what the world gives us, right? But there's 2 things within that. One, you don't need position all the time. And sometimes finding the highest position is not the best thing for you, but finding the position on the bus where you fit the cog the most is what's there for you. It's what God has opened his hands to you, your talents, right? And what brings you joy in your life. So that's working effectively. But then also it's the understanding that authority is placed in your life. And sometimes we like the authority and we dislike the authority, or we're not happy with the opinions. But every piece of authority that is placed in your life is God placed. Your position is God placed. The authority in your life is God placed. And the respect of that and the reverence of that is what we need to show in every situation.
Yeah, you're getting right out there where we're going to start stepping on toes.
Yeah.
Because what the Bible says that we're supposed to do with all authority, it doesn't give you an option. It doesn't give you an option whether they're like the elephant or the donkey or blah, 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 or any of those things. It's like we're supposed to honor those in authority, and honor's a huge word. And I'm not even going to go there. We're going to save that for another one because there's so much in that also. To be simple, what you're saying, the Paul Timothy model is really that aspect. Paul says, "Follow me as I follow Christ," and so there's always people who are further down the road than you are.
Right.
Spiritual leaders and those kind of things. Your pastors, your mentors, family members. There's always somebody that's further down the road, and there's always people that are a little behind where you're at. And the idea is that follow me as I follow Christ mentality, where I'm following somebody that's further down the road, that has more experience, that has whether it's life experience or spiritual, whatever that thing is, and that I'm bringing somebody along, that's a little bit behind where I'm at. And it's, when you say ahead and behind, it automatically paints a picture of better or worse. And that's not the case.
Right.
Because the understanding, like we said from the very beginning, is that we're all in a process of growth. We're all in a process of transformation. There's not a better or worse. There's just further and not as far.
Right.
And so, and if you really develop that model, well, then I'm following somebody who's further along, and I'm leading somebody that's a little behind me, but then they're leading somebody that's a little behind them, and then they're leading somebody that's a little behind them, and we're all growing together. There is truly community of discipleship and change that's happening, because we can all see a little further down the road by the people that we're following.
Right.
And that dynamic really leads to, man, I love the way he treats his wife. Man, I love the way he treats his kids. Man, I love the way his work ethic, his blah, 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 whatever. I love the way he can freely worship, and there's no you know what I mean? And that's a big thing with guys. They see people raising their hands, or guys crying, or blah, 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 or this or that. And they're like, oh, okay, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong with him. But, then there's that aspect of, man, why can't I do that? I love the way he does it. Maybe it's weird. Maybe it's awkward for me, maybe whatever. But there's an expression of worship that, I want to plug in. I want to get close to. The same thing with, people that have read the Bible through every year, whatever. There's all kind of areas where we can grow, and we can find several people in those areas that are further down the road than we are. And, it's not, I don't want to be him. I want my relationship in Christ to develop to the same place that his is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's not a human idolization or oh man, he's the greatest guy ever. But it's aspects of his life where he's grown and his relationship has grown that I'm really pushing.
Right.
Yeah, and really pushing through.
And that should be our challenge to every man out there. Find somebody that challenges you enough that you want to follow. Mm-hmm. Right. And then also look for somebody you could lead.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we all have sons, so that's an easy answer for us in one particular way. But where else are we leading? Where else could we do that and effectively do that? And if every one of us has that mindset on a daily, that's where our growth comes from.
So, and I don't really think you have to look that hard, because we're all placed in areas where whether you can influence one person or you can influence 100 people, there's always opportunity.
Right.
To lead and to follow. And it's maximizing our time in that, whether it's, we all have different areas where we work. We all have different dynamics of what we do for a living. Our family dynamics are different and how we operate in those. But, pursuing the best God has for us and not settling for it's okay, is a big part of that.
Right.
What's your last one, John?
Last one's 1 Corinthians. So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13 through 14. And it says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. And I think the three of these verses basically sum up and let you know that a true man is vigilant against danger, faithful to the truth, brave in the face of opposition, persistent through trials, and above all, loving.
Right.
It's and we were talking about that during the break, that it's not a judgment type thing. We're not condemning people. We're not judging people. We're loving them. And we're trying to embody what Christ did while he was on earth. And he was not, I mean, he was bringing in the people that nobody wanted to associate with. Yeah. And he was loving
Tax
on them, and he was setting an example.
Prostitutes.
I mean, the 12 that he picked to be his disciples, like nobody would have picked those 12.
Knucklehead.
Like if you're building a team, if you're building an army, those 12 probably aren't the ones you're going to pick, but he picked the least likely. He loved on them, and he set the example of what we need to do, Right. And I think that those 3 verses kind of lay out what it means to be a strong Christian man, and kind of sums up, what we've been talking about and what this first podcast is based on, and what hopefully the many more podcasts to come, will branch off of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we've laid out a great foundation for you guys that are tuning in. If you've made it this far, really this first podcast is to share where we're at, who we are, let you get some insight into the men that you're choosing to spend your time listening to for a little bit. We do absolutely appreciate it. But also, if you're a lady that's tuned in and somehow you made it this far, this isn't, it's primarily men and about men, but if you're a lady, a young lady, or you are married and you just wanted to figure out what Christian men are supposed to do, like this is going to be what you're looking for. If you're unmarried or in a dating relationship, the things that we're going to talk about on this podcast, it sounds kind of bad, but does the guy you're dating measure up? Is the guy that you're looking to spend your life with somebody that these things are important to? If you are married, if are these areas where you can pray for your husband to grow and develop? We really, are primarily addressing men, but this is for anybody who, wants godly men in their lives, who wants, as a man to develop that way, as a female to know what they're looking for, what their sons should be, what their spouses should be. We really want to kind of reach out and help everybody. And hopefully you've gotten, a good idea of who we are, what we're about. I tried to not joke very much this time. It'll probably happen. This is our first one, so I'm trying to be on my best behavior. But
so far, so good.
Yeah, I really. We're gonna have some, edits in here, so you won't probably not see that I raised my hand and said I had to go pee, but I did because.
No, we're leaving that in there.
Okay, perfect. But we want to thank you, and we appreciate you tuning in. The next one that comes out, I think what we're planning on covering is some common misconceptions and some characteristics. Now that we've kind of laid a foundation of who we are, what we believe, you've gotten to know us a little bit. We really want to start getting into the parts and pieces of godly men, how they should act, and even bring up some of those misconceptions about what people think a real man is, and put some of those things to bed and really highlight what we should be about, who we are, and begin the process of really digging deep into godly Christian men.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, and not to throw a shameless plug out there, but follow us on Close Cover Podcast.
Please, yes,
on Instagram and Facebook, and go to Go Talk Texas on YouTube, and you'll see us live there also. So don't forget to do those things. Close Cover Podcast and Go Talk Texas.